Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's August 24th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and it was pretty much all downhill. There's a two-tiered channel here working lower. Uh, we actually kind of overshot that late in the day. You can see it pushed through, pulled back, and tested it. Um, but you were better off just kind of playing the trends within the larger trend. And there was a couple different ways on. There's a measured move up there, and then you'd want to look for another one here, which we overshot that, but prices were actually traveling back to the upper trend line here in the bigger pattern. There's your first measured move. So when we started going lower from there, you would have wanted to look for a target down to here, and you can see we might have went a tick further than that, it looks like. But I also would have used this leg, and you see there's two legs there. Of course, there's multiple swings within there, but that's a leg up, two legs, and another leg up. So you want to measure that one and then put that here, and you're looking for a measured move down to that. And you can see we found some support right there, and that's because a lot of the smart traders that know this stuff are exiting there most likely, but it still pushed on down before it bounced. So, but again, prices were traveling to here, and I'm guessing there was enough buying that here that those people probably jumped back in and drove it on down. I don't know exactly why. It doesn't matter why, but we know why prices were moving to this level, but they pushed on through on actually being oversold. So that's how the measured moves that I saw today. But in the big picture, it's just all down here with a two-tiered channel. It looked like it was going to be a range day early on, and so I was playing it as a range until we knew for sure this channel was valid. And I'll tell you how I found this channel. Uh, Notice that gap right there and that gap right there. If you drew that line right through that gap and then pulled it to the highs, you would have been expecting that reversal right there. But it takes skill to find that stuff. But it's there today. And if you just get a measured move down, same distance between those two lines here, that gives you this level right here. So that's how I came up with that channel. But anyway, let's back out, talk about the trades, and get through today. A pretty good trading day today. Lots of scalps, but there were a couple of moves here where you probably could have caught a runner and had a pretty good trade. But the first trade I saw was right here. Notice, and there's a trend line, a shorter term one working down. There's a move down, pull back. First entry. There's really a failed second entry long here, but that's the two swings you would use. And if you were trading here, you'd probably want to take that trade. But that was before I came in. Then we move on down and we pull back on a little breakout pullback short from that support area right there, and that confirms that trend line. And really, you could treat that like failed second entry long as well, because this is really all one move right here. And so I like going short there, but it pulls back, and I like even adding on there. If you weren't in, definitely get in here. And if you were in, that's a second entry short. Go ahead and get in. I mean, this is playing out like a range at this point. You got a sure trend line working down, and you're coming right off of it. You got to think about this low, but with it being a trap, I'm more concerned about this low, and you got plenty of room. And we're probably coming all the way to here. So that should be probably where your target's going. And it looked like it might go straight there in one move, but you would have caught runners on these first two early in the morning, and that's a pretty good move. And then it bounces, and you got a trend line working up. You get a close outside, move up. It doesn't make a new high. This is almost an exact repeat pattern of what we saw about the same time yesterday. There's a double top there. There's really like a little double top right here. And so this is almost a double test. It's not back to the trend line though. It's not the most bearish bar. It's got a little stem, and then you get an inside bar. So I'm not crazy about it, but there's some reasons to want to take it. Um, so I did mark it green, but I'm not crazy about it. I'll be honest with you. Um, but this is a double top, and you pull back first entry long, pull back second entry long. It fails. It's a little breakout pull back second entry, failed second entry long. So there's a trap there, and you're looking for prices to come down here. So I like that one. It's just enough for a scalp, basically. It actually went up and then turned and went out the other side. So I'd go short one tick below that little bar. And then it bounces again. And you're coming up. You get the break. You get a move to a new high here. You do get a close outside the trend line, but that's a big bearish bar. It's a break, a move to a new high. Just it's a second entry short. So go short right there. Actually, it's not really a second entry short because you do got a tick lower and a tick lower there. But that is the first break higher. So it's really the second leg up. So on a bigger picture, it is a second entry short. So that's the reason I say that. And then it pulls back and gives you another lower high. Right off, everything's right off the trend line still. And you're looking for a new low. And this is a downtrend. It is a little close to these lows, but that's bearish enough. I still like it. I'd probably let it break lower and maybe use a limit order right at the bottom or a tick back in just to give yourself a little more room there. It does pull back again, but by this time you just don't have enough room, and you've got a little double bottom there, so you got to be a little worried. But it does tick up and create that trap and turn down, so you could make an argument really for that one to be almost red, definitely green. So let's just go ahead and mark it green. But the reason I don't like it is because we're so close to those lows, and by this time you would think we'd already drop on down there, and you see we still struggle to get down there. So you had to be a little bit concerned about them. And definitely all these touches right in here. We've already had a break. We've already got a new low. So you got to be real careful about those. But notice what happens. We come back and we test that high once. We come back, we test it twice. So that's a double test rule. But we've already got a break and a new low. So you better be real sure you want to go short right there. I definitely use a limit order because you don't have enough room to get out probably without one. And somebody asked me this question yesterday. He said, everywhere you had those green arrows, you didn't have room to get out before you got to the other side. Well, I talked about that yesterday. So make sure you understand that. You can't just enter with a stop right there because you definitely don't have room to get out. You got to let it break lower and then drop a limit order far enough back and hope it gets filled, and it may or may not. So you may not be able to get in those trades. So that's why they're green. But then it pushes on down here and pulls out. This is just basically a breakout pullback short. And look how bearish that bar is. You got to go short at the very low of the day. But I like entering there because this is a double top. And that's a first entry long, second entry long. That's a trap. You're probably going to trap some people here. And you can tell it did because look how it rocketed off. Oops. So the reason it rocketed off there is because everybody was getting long down here and they were wrong. So you got to be careful getting long down here. You got to make sure, and that was another question somebody asked. You don't just buy this low blindly. You wait on a price action setup based on the way we teach it. And if you get that and a chance to get in low enough where you can get out before the next resistance, that's when you take it. Generally, always these breakouts are going to fail, and I love this little long here. We've definitely closed outside. We've got one leg down, correction, a second leg down. So we got two legs down to new low. Look how far we are away from the EMA. That's a little small 2-bar signal bar, so very low risk. And it's probably going back to the trend line, and it's probably coming all the way back to here because notice we didn't test that yet. And that's what happens. It comes all it. Notice we got a little resistance at the EMA. That's what I meant to say, not trend line, EMA or the resistance or the previous support, which should act as resistance hopefully. And it comes on back up. So you could consider going short here, but notice how we're going sideways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars, and there's a doji, at least one doji in there, lots of stems. I wouldn't go short or long out of that. Just wait and see what happens. It pushes lower. It's tempting to go long here, but you don't have room to get out before this. You've already had that resistance. And but notice what happens. You get a double test here of this area. Test it once, test it twice, and you actually get the new high on this trend line here. So now, and now you got enough room to get out before you get back down here to this low, and definitely before down here. And this turns out to be a pretty good trade. It doesn't go any further and it ends up bouncing, but again, I don't think you want to go long because we haven't gotten through that yet. You might could argue to make this one green, but I think you're better off to skip that trade because we haven't got through this resistance yet. We've tested it. How many bars? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times we've tested that and hadn't got through. That's pretty risky. So if you could get in here on this bar right here with enough room to get out from there, I'm okay with that one. So maybe I should just go ahead and mark it green and make sure you understand that you can't enter with a stop right there because you don't have room. But once it breaks above, you could drop a limit order far enough back in that you've got 5 ticks before here, and then I'm okay with entering there. Not the first one, but on this failure to go lower here in second entry long, yes. And then same thing, this is a double bottom, so this is a failed second entry short right here. It is the first close outside of this little channel working back, and your figuring prices are probably coming back to here, and this could be the low of the day, and this could be a range, and we could go higher again. So there's some reasons that this one is borderline being red, or I'm sorry, blue, but I left it green just because it's just, that's two dojis in a row, and you're kind of going sideways, and it does have that little move down, so it's somewhat of a trap, but you still got that resistance right here that we hadn't made it through, and that's where we just turned down from once again. So there's just not a lot of room to get out there, even if we are going back up to the upper trend line. And you had to figure that was probably the target there. That's where we were heading. But this is also a range, so if this didn't hold, that would be my next target up here because it's a range day. Or it was at to this point. We're still looking at probably a range. This is where it really became a continued downtrend because this is what confirmed these two swings here in this trend line. The first bar here is not bearish enough. The one next to it is. So a break below that, I'm okay. You still have to use, let me make this a little bigger. You still have to use the high of the swing, which is this bar, for your safety stop, but your stop would go right here. And if you caught this one, it does pull back and give you another chance, but then it's a doji, and it's so close to the EMA, I don't like adding on there. But when you get the failed second entry long right here and confirm that new trend line right there, I like going short. So even though that's a doji and that's kind of going sideways, the odds are this is a bigger channel, and we're probably coming all the way back to here, and if this is a two-tier channel, we're probably going all the way to the other side. And so I like that one, and you would have caught runners off either one of these. That's the really good part. And then you get a second entry short here, but this is more sideways. There's probably a midline in here, but I still don't really like going short right there. You can see there is a midline, and that's right off that midline. So you could consider that one. I went back and forth about whether to make it green, but it's getting late in the day, and we're right around these lows. But this is just a pullback to test that breakout area, and it's a second entry short. So yeah, I probably should at least make it green. And you know, you could make an argument, since there is a midline there, that it could even be red, but I won't, just simply because there's not much room between there and that double bottom. It could hit there and bounce and come back to the trend line and then go down, even if we're going lower. So that's the concern there, and that's the reason I don't want to make that one red, really. And then this tells you the market's pretty weak here when you only get back to the midline and turn down, but even more so when it's time to go back to the upper side of the trend line and you only really go sideways instead of up. And notice that's what's happening here. We just kind of go sideways, and actually a little trend line right there working up. You get a close outside, move to a new high, and you do get a break of the trend line here, and that's a big bearish bar. Go short right there. You can't go short on these two because you're going sideways and you got a doji in there and several bars stacked up. There's not room to get out before here, and you see you would have got burned even though it's right off the trend line. You need that attempt at a new high, and you actually get one, and then a bearish bar. So I like that setup. And again, you would have caught a runner here. This is after 2 o'clock. I did mean to note that, but it's right on the bubble. So you might consider taking that one just simply because we're probably going to make a new low at the very least, but we're probably going to try to touch the other side of this channel, and it ends up going further than that. So this was another great move with a runner. Again, it's right at the 2 o'clock hour, so that might be enough reason to skip it because you don't want to make a mistake that late in the day because you can't make it up. You know, if you make a mistake in here somewhere, you got time to make it up the rest of the day. But when you make one right here around 2 o'clock, you don't always have a chance. And a lot of times late in the day, it just kind of does something like this, and you don't even get a setup. But as you can see here, sometimes you get some really good setups late in the day. So, but I generally don't like to trade after 2 o'clock. And just because it looks good today doesn't mean it looked good tomorrow. Well, you can see what we had yesterday. It's continued to work down, but it's just not much volume or action there. So, but just remember, going back to this yesterday, yeah, you can't buy this. You can't buy these blindly. And if you don't have room, say if this is your signal bar and you use a stop, you got to have room to get out before you get to those highs up there. If you don't, you can't take the trade. You have to let it break higher and drop a limit order in. This one, I don't even think you got room to get out before here. So you got to let it break higher and drop a limit order in. Same thing here. The closer you can get into this line, the better. Or if you can get in just below it, even better. Same thing off the highs. This is a nice little setup because you got plenty of room between here and the last low, which is down here at the bottom. Same thing on these. These are a little larger bars, but you got to make sure that with a stop, you can still get 5 ticks before you get to those lows. If you don't, you have to use a limit order, and if you don't get filled, then you just skip the trade. So yeah, you don't just buy and sell these blindly either, because sometimes, even though it still works, notice here it pushed through. You could have probably bought this one blindly. If you do it blindly, you're going to have to give yourself a little more stop, and if it gets stopped out, you can't move your stop. You can't argue with it. But you pretty much could have bought any of these blindly right at the last low, except for this one. So, but I don't recommend doing that. So do not buy blindly, because this one would have ended up failing too. But you had a clue then, because we're not. Notice how every time we came up here, we got to the highs, and every time we came down here, we got to the lows. But all of a sudden, we can't get back to the highs, and you start making lower highs. That's a clue we're about to break lower. The buying's running out of steam, and the sellers are gathering steam, and it breaks on through. Same thing here. Notice how we suddenly are making lower. They're not. This one's lower than that one, and this one's just really a double top. But then this one's lower than that one, and so you get those clues that we're probably going through. You should be getting a bounce after that many bounces off that low. It should go higher eventually, like it did finally here. Didn't last. It just led to a more downtrend. But okay, that's about it for today. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week for us. Hard to believe this week's already over, but it almost is. So I don't know where the time's going. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for the day. Hope you had a good trading day. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.